Let's talk about wheat. It's easy to overlook, just a humble grain, but it's the backbone of diets and economies around the world. Every loaf of bread, every bowl of pasta, every roti or chapati starts with these tiny seeds. Wheat is more than just food, it's a symbol of civilization, of trade, and of the delicate balance that keeps our world fed. Not just what's on your toast, but where it comes from and why it matters. The journey from field to table is long and complicated, crossing borders, oceans, and sometimes ethical lines. The story of wheat is the story of global connection, and sometimes global conflict. Right now, a global drama is unfolding, one that most of us never see. Ukraine, one of the world's breadbaskets, accuses Bangladeshi companies of buying grain stolen by Russia from occupied Ukrainian territories. These aren't just isolated incidents, they're part of a much larger struggle over resources, power, and survival. This isn't just about a few shiploads, it's a tangled web of international law, economic survival, and geopolitics. Ukraine wants sanctions, the EU is involved, and the world is watching to see how these disputes play out. Every shipment is a test of international resolve and the rules that hold our system together. And Bangladesh? It's caught in the middle, just trying to feed its people. For a country with 170 million mouths to feed, the stakes couldn't be higher. Food security isn't just a policy, it's a daily struggle, a matter of life and death for millions. Imagine your neighbor's house is robbed and you see their lamp for sale halfway across the world. That's how Ukraine feels watching its grain shipped abroad. It's not just about lost property, it's about justice, sovereignty, and the pain of watching your resources benefit others while your own people suffer. For Bangladesh, the priority is food security for 170 million people. The government and businesses are under immense pressure to keep prices stable and shelves stocked, especially as global food prices soar and supply chains falter. The origins of the grain are less important than keeping shelves stocked. When hunger is at the door, questions of provenance can seem like a luxury. But every decision has consequences, rippling far beyond the checkout counter. But when Ukraine sends official complaints, it puts Bangladesh in a diplomatic bind. Do you risk angering a powerful trading partner, or do you stand with international law? It's a dilemma with no easy answers, and every move is scrutinized on the world stage. This is a story about sovereignty, survival, and the rules that govern our interconnected world. It's about how a single grain of wheat can become a flashpoint for international tension, and how the choices of one country can affect millions across the globe. A war in Eastern Europe is sending shockwaves to South Asia and Brussels. The consequences of conflict don't stop at borders, they travel with every shipment, every deal, every meal. The stolen grain saga is a microcosm of global instability. It's a reminder that in our interconnected world, even the smallest grain can tip the scales. Let's dig in and uncover the layers of this complex, high-stakes story. Ukraine's accusation is blunt. Russia is systematically looting grain from occupied regions like Kherson and Zaporizhzhia. They say this isn't petty theft, it's a state-run operation, with grain seized, stored, and shipped out through Crimean ports. Ukraine calls it a war crime, a violation of sovereignty and economic strangulation. The evidence? Satellite images shipping data and official letters to Bangladesh naming vessels and companies. Ukraine wants Bangladesh to reject these shipments and punish the importers. This is part of Ukraine's broader strategy. Make buying this grain so toxic that Russia can't profit. By exposing buyers, Ukraine hopes to choke off a key funding source for Russia's war. It's economic warfare, fought with spreadsheets and shipping manifests. Russia's response? Denial and deflection. Moscow claims this is just normal trade from what it now calls Russian land. They argue, we're not stealing, we're exporting our own grain. The world, however, overwhelmingly rejects Russia's annexations. Still, for buyers, Russia's narrative offers a veneer of legitimacy. Russia flips the script, blaming Ukraine and the West for food crises, insisting their exports help feed the world. For countries like Bangladesh, the messaging is confusing. Ukraine cries theft, Russia promises business as usual. Navigating these conflicting claims is a diplomatic minefield. For many, the priority is affordable food, not the legalities of war. The result? A global market clouded by politics and uncertainty. Bangladesh is stuck in the middle. Its government's top priority: feed a massive growing population. When Ukraine's accusations landed, Dhaka responded cautiously, investigating but not condemning or rejecting shipments. They stress, these are private deals, not state purchases. Bangladesh wants to respect international law but can't risk angering Russia, a key supplier. For importers, discounted grain is hard to resist, especially when paperwork appears legitimate. Bangladesh's dilemma is shared by many in the global south, caught between principle and necessity. They're not part of the conflict, but they feel its effects, especially in food and energy markets. The goal is survival, not taking sides. It's a balancing act with no easy answers. Frustrated, Ukraine turns to the EU, demanding sanctions on Bangladeshi companies buying contested grain. The aim: real economic pain for those involved, not just moral outrage. EU sanctions could mean asset freezes, travel bans, and trade embargoes, making targeted firms global outcasts. The EU faces a dilemma: support Ukraine and close loopholes, or risk alienating Bangladesh and other developing nations. Secondary sanctions could damage diplomatic ties and worsen the global food crisis. The EU must weigh its support for Ukraine against broader humanitarian and geopolitical fallout. The decision isn't just about grain, it's about the future of global trade rules. Every move has ripple effects far beyond Europe. The stakes are high and the world is watching. Proving where a shipload of grain comes from is nearly impossible. Grain is fungible. Once mixed, it's indistinguishable. Russia and traders exploit this, blending Ukrainian grain with Russian, laundering its origins. The supply chain is deliberately murky. Trucked to Crimea, loaded onto ships, transferred at sea, tracking systems turned off, paperwork falsified. Ukraine uses satellites, eyewitnesses, and shipping data to build its case, but legal proof is elusive. Buyers rely on official documents claiming due diligence. This plausible deniability shields everyone involved. The result: a shadowy trade that thrives on complexity. Accountability is nearly impossible. The system is designed to keep the truth hidden. How big is this operation? To truly grasp the scale, imagine vast fields stretching to the horizon, filled with golden wheat and barley. Ukraine has long been known as the breadbasket of Europe, and its grain output feeds millions both at home and abroad. The infrastructure supporting this industry is massive: endless silos, sprawling storage facilities, and a network of railways and ports designed to move grain efficiently across continents. Estimates suggest Russia has stolen millions of tons of Ukrainian grain, worth over $1 billion. This isn't just a few truckloads, it's entire harvests, loaded onto convoys and ships under military guard, then whisked away to foreign markets. The sheer volume is staggering, enough to fill thousands of freight cars or dozens of cargo ships. The Bangladesh shipments are just a fraction of the total, but they set a dangerous precedent. When even a small portion of stolen grain finds its way into the global market, it signals to others that this trade can happen without consequence. Each unchallenged sale normalizes the trade and emboldens future buyers. It creates a shadow market where stolen goods are quietly accepted, making it harder to trace origins and enforce accountability. For Ukraine, every ton lost is a blow to its economy and war effort. Grain exports are a major source of national income, funding everything from infrastructure to defense. The loss ripples through communities, leaving farmers without livelihoods and entire regions struggling to recover. Agriculture was Ukraine's backbone. Now, farmers in occupied areas have little incentive to plant. Fields lie fallow, equipment rusts, and the future of rural communities hangs in the balance. The uncertainty and risk make it nearly impossible to plan for the next season. For Russia, the grain is both cash and leverage, funding the war and building influence with food importing nations. By controlling these shipments, Russia can sway international partners, offer grain as aid, or use it as a bargaining chip in diplomatic negotiations. The stakes are economic and geopolitical. Grain prices fluctuate on world markets, and every shipment affects global food security. Leaders around the world are watching closely, aware that the outcome could reshape alliances and trade patterns. This isn't just about wheat, it's about power and control. Whoever holds the grain holds influence over nations that depend on imports to feed their people. Billions of dollars and millions of lives are on the line. For many countries, affordable grain means the difference between hunger and hope. The consequences of this conflict reach far beyond Ukraine's borders, touching families and economies around the globe. This isn't just a Ukraine-Bangladesh problem. It's a warning about global food fragility. Before the war, Ukraine and Russia supplied over a quarter of the world's wheat. War has shattered this balance, driving up prices and fueling hunger worldwide. The stolen grain controversy adds risk and confusion, making trade more expensive and unpredictable. Poorer countries suffer most, unable to absorb price shocks. If stolen goods can be sold with impunity, it undermines the rules of global commerce. It sets a precedent for resource theft in other conflicts. The world faces a moral dilemma: cheap food versus justice and sovereignty. The most vulnerable pay the highest price. The Ukraine-Bangladesh grain dispute is more than a simple trade spat. It's a global crisis in miniature, a microcosm of the world's fragile food security. What began as a disagreement over grain shipments has spiraled into a complex web of economic, political, and humanitarian consequences, touching lives far beyond the borders of these two nations. Ukraine, a major breadbasket for the world, fights to protect not just its economy, but its very sovereignty. Every grain exported is a lifeline for its war-torn economy, and the government is using every tool at its disposal, from high-stakes diplomacy to targeted sanctions, to keep its agricultural sector afloat and assert its independence on the global stage. Meanwhile, Russia denies any wrongdoing, insisting that its actions are simply part of legitimate international trade. Yet, its involvement casts a long shadow, complicating the already tangled supply chains and raising suspicions about the true origins of grain shipments. Bangladesh, like many developing nations, finds itself caught in a painful dilemma, torn between the urgent need to feed its people and the ethical questions of supporting contested trade. For millions of families, the stakes are nothing less than daily survival. The murky, often opaque global supply chain makes accountability nearly impossible. Grain changes hands countless times, crossing borders and passing through intermediaries, making it difficult to trace its true origin or ensure fair practices. For Ukraine, billions of dollars and the future of its agricultural sector are at stake. For the world, this dispute is a test of the so-called rules-based international order, a system already under strain from conflict and economic instability. The disruption in grain flows ripples through global markets, driving up prices and hitting the poorest nations hardest. In places where every meal is a struggle, even a small increase in food costs can mean the difference between hunger and hope. This is a story of deep interconnectedness, where war and politics in one region can trigger food shortages and economic crises thousands of miles away. The fate of a single harvest can shape the destinies of millions. It forces us all to confront difficult questions about responsibility, justice, and the ethics of survival in a desperate world. Who bears the cost when the global food system falters? And who will step up to ensure justice for those most at risk? In our deeply globalized age, no conflict is ever truly local. The price of war, of disrupted trade, and of broken promises is paid far beyond the battlefield, echoing in kitchens, markets, and communities around the world.